March 10, 1943. The air over Western Europe is a sheet of gray. At 20,000 feet, German ace Hans Hahn peers down from the cockpit of his Messerschmitt Bf 109. Below him, lumbering along, is a new American fighter he hasn't seen before. Wide fuselage, thick wings, and a radio engine that makes the nose look bloated. Hahn chuckles over radio. "A flying milk jug," he says. His wingman laughs. The Americans, it seems, have sent clumsy machines into the war. To the Luftwaffe, the sky is still theirs. It's an image that captures the irony of the coming year. German pilots laughing, confident in their superiority, unaware that the machine beneath them, ungainly, heavy, mocked even by its own crews at first, was about to turn the air war on its head. The aircraft was a Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, and in 1943, it was still an unproven brute. The German Luftwaffe had ruled the skies since 1939. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 had been Europe's terror during the Battle of France and the Battle of Britain. By 1941, the Focke-Wulf 190 appeared, a nimble, deadly fighter with powerful cannons. Together, these machines made German pilots arrogant. They were lighter, more agile, and battle-tested. They had the kills to prove it. By early 1943, the Luftwaffe's confidence was unshakable. The United States, meanwhile, was a newcomer in Europe. The U.S. Army Air Forces had joined the war late, and their strategy of daylight bombing raids demanded escorts. B. 17 flying fortresses and B. 24 liberators needed fighters to shepherd them across the English Channel and back. Yet no American fighter had the range or strength to survive deep over Germany. The P-40 and the Spitfire had their moments, but neither could escort bombers into the Reich's heartland. So when the Republic Aviation Company rolled out the P-47, expectations were mixed at best. Even American pilots were skeptical. At 10 tons fully loaded, it was one of the heaviest single-engine fighters ever built. Its wings were thick, its fuselage broad, compared to the sleek Bf-109s and FW-190s. It looked more like a bulldog waddling into a greyhound race. The British Royal Air Force, after seeing it, joked that the Americans had mistaken the battlefield for a barnyard. Its nickname came quickly, Jug. Some said it was short for Juggernaut, but most assumed it meant milk jug, fat, round, and clumsy-looking. On paper, it didn't inspire awe. The Luftwaffe laughed, and truthfully, at first, so did many of the Americans asked to fly it. Yet the P-47 had secrets hidden beneath its bulky frame. At its heart was a Pratt & Whitney R 2800 double Wasp radial engine, one of the most powerful piston engines of the war. It produced over 2,000 horsepower and gave the aircraft remarkable durability. Unlike German fighters with liquid-cooled inline engines, the P-47's air-cooled radial could take damage and keep running. A Messerschmitt might be brought down by a single bullet in the radiator. A Thunderbolt could fly home with half its cylinders shot out. And then there was its armament, 8.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, 4 in each wing, each capable of firing 850 rounds per minute. Together, they spat out 13 pounds of lead every second. For comparison, a German Bf 109 typically carried 2 13mm machine guns and 1 20mm cannon. The Thunderbolt could unleash nearly 4 times as much fire in a single burst. But numbers and blueprints meant little to the skeptical pilots, seeing it for the first time in 1943. In its early months, the Thunderbolt's flaws seemed more obvious than its strengths. It was slow to climb, heavy on the controls, and thirsty for fuel. Young American pilots transferring from nimble trainers felt like they were being asked to wrestle an iron bathtub into the sky. Some openly wondered if the aircraft was a mistake. German pilots shared the disdain. In a Luftwaffe report from the summer of 1943, the P-47 was described as big, heavy, and of little danger if engaged quickly. German aces mocked its appearance. Some called it the tractor, others the fat one. They assumed any encounter with it would be easy. But the truth was more complicated. The Thunderbolt had one trick that no German fighter could match. It could dive like a stone and live to tell the tale. Its rugged frame and thick wings gave it a dive speed far greater than the Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf. American pilots learned quickly. If you wanted to survive, you took the jug high, spotted the enemy, and then dropped on them like a hammer. Colonel Hubert "Hub" Zemke, leader of the 56 Fighter Group, became one of the first to unlock its potential. His group, later nicknamed Zemke's Wolfpack, pioneered tactics that used the Thunderbolt's strengths. They avoided turning dogfights, where the German fighters excelled, and instead fought vertically, diving from above and using the jug's blistering firepower in short, devastating bursts. One of Zemke's men later recalled, "It wasn't a dancer, it was a brawler. You didn't win by finesse, you won by bringing down the hammer." The contrast between expectation and reality could not have been sharper. German pilots thought the Thunderbolt was clumsy prey, but when they turned to chase it, they often found themselves on the receiving end of 8 guns that could shred an aircraft in seconds. An American pilot named Robert Johnson told the story of one such fight in June 1943. His P-47 was riddled with over 200 bullet holes by a Focke-Wulf. Oil smeared his canopy. His controls jammed. His plane refused to go down. The German ace pulled alongside, signaling Johnson to bail out. Johnson ignored him. The German emptied his guns at point-blank range. Somehow, impossibly, the P-47 stayed aloft. Out of ammunition, the German finally saluted and flew away. Johnson limped back to England. His squadron counted 21 cannon shells and hundreds of machine gun rounds lodged in his plane. It was battered nearly beyond recognition, but it flew. Stories like that began circulating among pilots. The laughter faded. The statistics added weight to legend. In 1943, the average life expectancy of a B-17 crew over Germany was 11 missions. But as more P-47s joined the escorts, bomber losses began to drop. A single P-47 squadron could scatter entire Luftwaffe formations. German pilots found themselves in shock. They had mocked the jug. Now they were writing in their diaries about its terrifying resilience. One Luftwaffe ace admitted, "You could fire at them and they would not fall. You could not chase them in the dive. They were not beautiful, but they were deadly." Still, in the early days, the relationship between American pilots and their aircraft remained complicated. The Thunderbolt demanded a new mindset. It wasn't elegant like a Spitfire, nor did it climb with the grace of a 109. It was stubborn, heavy, and occasionally unforgiving. But pilots discovered that if you respected it, it rewarded you. They learned to trust its thick armor, its massive engine, its ability to bring them home when other planes would have failed. A few called a guardian angel in steel, and slowly the jug earned loyalty. Of course, there was still humor. Even as they came to love it, American crews never stopped teasing their own machine. "She's not pretty," one pilot joked. "She looks like a beer barrel with wings. But I'd rather go to war in a beer barrel than in a coffin." It was gallows humor, but it carried truth. The jug was not sleek. It did not inspire poetry. But it saved lives, and in war, that mattered more than beauty. By the end of 1943, the transformation was underway. What had once been laughed at was becoming feared. The Luftwaffe still held initiative, but cracks had appeared. German pilots, who once mocked the jug, now treated it with caution. And American crews, once doubtful, now spoke of it with a strange kind of pride. As Colonel Zemke put it, "The jug is no lady. She's a fighter. She'll never let you down." The laughter was fading. Respect, grudging, reluctant respect, was replacing it. But the true storm was yet to come. Because when the jug's 8.50 calibers opened up in mass formation, the skies themselves would seem to shatter. And soon, the Germans would stop laughing altogether. October 14th, 1943. The morning was cold, the skies clear but unforgiving. Hundreds of American bombers, B-17s and B-24s, rumbled eastward toward Germany. Their target was Schweinfurt, home to the ball-bearing factories that kept the German war machine turning. The Luftwaffe knew this was coming. Squadrons of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs rose to meet them, confident that another massacre was at hand. For the Americans, this day would be remembered as Black Thursday. 60 bombers were lost, hundreds of airmen killed or captured. But amid the carnage, one thing became clear. Without escorts, the bombers could not survive. And the only fighter tough enough to take on the challenge was a very plane once mocked by both sides, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. By late 1943, the Jug had begun to carve out a reputation. Its range was still limited compared to what the Americans needed, but with drop tanks slung under its wings, it could reach deeper into German territory than before. More importantly, pilots had learned to fight with it, to trust its armor, to dive when others climbed, and to unleash those 8 Brownings with ruthless efficiency. The German pilots noticed. Their laughter had begun to fade into caution, and caution in war is often the first step toward fear. The air war over Europe was becoming a battle of endurance. The Luftwaffe was stretched thin, forced to defend every factory, every railway, every oil refinery. The Americans, with their massive industrial base, could replace planes faster than Germany could shoot them down. The Thunderbolt embodied that industrial strength, rugged, mass-produced, built in the thousands. German intelligence reports by early 1944 began noting the Jug's presence with increasing seriousness. What had once been dismissed as a heavy target was now described as a formidable escort. The Jug's resilience in combat was shocking. Reports told of Thunderbolts returning to base with wings shredded, engines coughing, tails nearly torn off, yet somehow still airborne. One German pilot wrote in his diary, "We call them flying tanks. They dive like stones, and when they fire, the sky fills with tracers. It is like being under artillery fire in the air." The statistics tell part of the story. By 1944, Thunderbolts were claiming hundreds of kills each month. In Europe alone, they would go on to destroy more than 20,000 enemy aircraft. But the true terror of the Jug was not just in air-to-air combat. It was in what it could do to the ground. With bombs, rockets, and those 8 machine guns, the P-47 became the scourge of German supply lines. It shredded trains, convoys, tanks, and troop concentrations. Bridges collapsed, rail yards erupted in fire. Columns of armored vehicles were reduced to smoking wreckage. The German soldier on the ground feared the sight of Jugs diving from the sun more than almost anything else. The sound became infamous. The roar of the double Wasp engine, followed by the ripping thunder of 8 Brownings tearing apart the earth below. One American pilot joked grimly, "If you're German and you can still hear your own heartbeat, it means a Jug hasn't found you yet." And yet, it wasn't just destruction that defined the Jug. It was survival. Francis Gabby Gabreski, who had become one of America's top aces with 28 kills, swore by the Thunderbolt. "She was my friend," he said. "She brought me home more times than I can count. I never doubted her once." Robert Johnson, the same pilot who had limped back from that impossible fight with a Focke-Wulf, went on to score 27 victories in a Jug. His story spread through both Allied and German ranks. The Luftwaffe could hardly believe that a fighter so riddled with holes could still fly. Johnson became living proof of the Jug's legendary toughness. Even the Germans, grudgingly, admitted its power. Luftwaffe ace Gunter Rahl remarked, "The P-47 was not beautiful, but you could not ignore it. Its firepower was terrible. You did not want to be in its way." By mid-1944, the P-47 had become an essential hammer in the Allied arsenal. It escorted bombers deeper into Germany, smashing Luftwaffe formations. It scoured the roads and fields of France after D-Day, tearing apart German armor and transport. Thunderbolts flew low over the hedgerows, leaving trails of fire and destruction that crippled the German ability to move supplies. German troops began giving them nicknames of their own. Some called them Jabos, short for Jag Bomber or Fighter Bomber. Others called them meat choppers, after the way their machine guns tore through infantry lines. The once laughed-at Jug had become a symbol of dread. The contrast was stark. Just a year earlier, the Germans had laughed at its bulk, its size, its supposed slowness. Now they dreaded the sight of it. But even in the darkest days of combat, there was room for wit. One American pilot recalled strafing a German train when a message came over the radio from a squadron leader. "Gentlemen, remember, this isn't hunting season. This is pest control." Laughter burst over the radio, even as the train below exploded in a ball of fire. Irony was never far from the surface. The ungainly beer barrel with wings had become one of the most lethal weapons of the air war. By 1945, as the Luftwaffe crumbled under the combined weight of Allied bombing, the Jug's reputation was cemented. German pilots no longer mocked it. They feared it. Bomber crews prayed for its presence. Ground troops cheered when they saw it overhead. The numbers tell a final, sobering story. By war's end, P-47 pilots had flown more than 746,000 sorties and dropped more than 130,000 tons of bombs. They fired over 135 million rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. No other Allied fighter destroyed more targets. And yet, for all its firepower, what pilots remembered most was its resilience. The Jug was not elegant, but it was faithful. It did not dance, but endured. In one final twist of irony, some Luftwaffe pilots who survived the war admitted that they had initially dismissed the Jug as a waste of aluminum. By 1945, they admitted it was one of the best fighters of the war. One German officer summed it up bitterly. "We used to laugh at the Jug, but by the end, no one was laughing." The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt is not just a story of an aircraft. It is a story of perception versus reality, of how something mocked as clumsy and ugly proved to be devastatingly effective, of how laughter gave way to silence and silence to fear. It is also the story of men who flew it, men who trusted their lives to a machine that did not promise beauty, but did promise survival. The Jug was never glamorous. It was never loved in the way the Spitfire was, nor admired for grace like the Mustang, but it was respected by friend and foe alike. In war, respect often matters more than beauty. As the war ended and the skies of Europe fell silent, many Thunderbolts were scrapped, melted down, forgotten. But in the memories of those who fought, it remained immortal. Picture it now. A formation of Jugs breaking through clouds, sunlight flashing off their wings, 8 Brownings in each wing ready to unleash hell. The air fills with tracers. The ground below erupts in fire, and the skies, once so firmly held by the Luftwaffe, are turned into a storm of lead. The laughter had stopped, and in its place came the thunder.